Desperate and shivering, the alien warrior pulled him into her bed. The frozen landing Lieutenant Dex Hawthorne's hands trembled against the controls as his reconnaissance fighter screamed through the atmosphere of the unnamed ice world. The emergency beacon had been broadcasting for 3 days now, too long for any human to survive in these conditions. His instruments flickered wildly as another system failed, the electrical fire behind his pilot's seat spreading acrid smoke through the cramped cockpit. "Come on, girl," he muttered through gritted teeth, fighting to keep the nose up as the frozen landscape rushed toward him. Just a little further. The impact came hard and fast. Metal shrieked against ice as the fighter carved a jagged furrow across the glacier, finally coming to rest against a towering ice formation. Dex's vision blurred as his head snapped forward, the safety harness cutting deep into his shoulders. Blood trickled from his forehead, freezing almost instantly in the sub-zero air that now whistled through the cracked canopy. He fumbled for his emergency kit with numb fingers. The oxygen readings on his portable unit showed maybe 6 hours of breathable air, assuming the cold didn't kill him first. The temperature gauge read -47 degrees Celsius, and dropping as the twin suns of the system began to set. Behind the mountain peaks, emergency beacon activated, he wheezed into his comm unit, knowing full well no one would hear it. The sector was quarantined, had been for over a decade since the Thauri War ended. Whatever was down here, Command wanted it forgotten. As darkness fell, Dex struggled from the wreckage, his breath forming crystalline clouds that fell like snow. Each step through the knee-deep powder sent spikes of agony through his ribs. Definitely broken, he thought grimly. The emergency shelter in his kit would buy him maybe one night, but without rescue, this frozen wasteland would be his tomb. The howling wind carried something else, a scent that made his survival instinct scream warnings. Smoke, not the acrid electrical fire from his ship, but would smoke. Someone else was alive on this death world. Following the scent led him up a treacherous slope of loose scree and ice. His vision tunneled as hypothermia began to set in, but desperation drove him forward. At the crest of a ridge, he saw it, a dim orange glow emanating from what looked like a natural cave formation. Smoke trickled from several vents in the ice above. As he stumbled closer, his boot caught on something metallic, half buried in the snow. Brushing away the ice revealed twisted wreckage bearing unfamiliar markings. Thauri script. His blood turned colder than the wind around him. The Thauri were 8-foot-tall predators with forearms, razor-sharp claws, and a warrior culture that made ancient Spartans look peaceful. During the war, they'd been humanity's most feared enemy, honorable in their own twisted way, but utterly ruthless in combat. The peace treaty had supposedly relocated all surviving Thauri to a distant sector, but clearly someone had been left behind, or imprisoned here. Dex's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm, but his fingers were too numb to draw it properly. He was defenseless, half-frozen, and about to enter the lair of humanity's most dangerous enemy. But the alternative was dying alone in the snow. The cave entrance was larger than it had appeared from the ridge, easily 12 feet high and carved with deliberate precision. Thauri architecture functional, imposing, built to intimidate. Heat washed over him as he stepped inside, and for a moment the relief was so intense he nearly collapsed. Then he heard the growl. It emerged from the shadows, like liquid death, a female Thauri in battle-scarred armor, her forearms ending in claws that could tear through reinforced steel. Bioluminescent tattoos pulsed along her elongated skull, and her predatory eyes locked onto his with lethal intent. Human. She snarled an accented standard, her voice like grinding stone. "You dare enter my sanctuary?" The warrior's hesitations. Aratek had not seen another living being in over 3 standard years. The human male who stumbled into her shelter was barely alive, his lips blue with cold, ice crystals clinging to his eyebrows, whole body shaking so violently she could hear his teeth chattering. From across the cave, her battle instinct screamed to kill him quickly. Humans were weak, treacherous creatures who fought with machines instead of honor. During the war, she had personally sent dozens to their ancestors. This one would die from her claws in seconds, adding another skull to her collection. But something stayed her hand. Perhaps it was the desperate courage in his eyes, not the cold calculation of a soldier. but the raw determination of someone who refused to surrender even when death was certain. Or maybe it was simply that she had grown so weary of the endless, crushing solitude that even an enemy's voice was preferable to the howling wind. "Please," the human gasped, his weapon forgotten in nerveless fingers. "The storm. I won't survive." "The night out there. Neither will you in here," Zarathic replied, but she didn't move to strike. Instead, she studied him with the tactical assessment that had made her one of the Thauri's most feared commanders before her exile. Young, perhaps 30 cycles by human reckoning, military bearing despite his injuries, a pilot. "Judging by his flight suit, you're military," she observed. "Scout class. If your equipment is any indication, what brings you to this forsaken world?" "Human emergency beacon," he managed through chattering teeth. Someone was broadcasting distress calls. "My ship crashed trying to land." Zarathic's arms flexed involuntarily. She had activated that beacon months ago in a moment of weakness, never believing anyone would actually respond. Certainly not a human rescue mission in forbidden space. "The beacon was mine," she admitted, studying his reaction. "I am Zarathic, formerly of the Third Battle Claw, now exile and prisoner of this ice tomb." The human's eyes widened, but not with the fear she expected. "You're a war criminal. This is a penal colony, indeed. And you are either very brave or very foolish to seek shelter with your species. Greatest enemy." She circled him slowly, noting how his injured leg struggled to support his weight. "I could kill you without effort, but you haven't." His voice was gaining strength now that the cave's warmth was reaching him. "Why?" The question caught her off guard. Why indeed? In the old days, she would have struck without hesitation, but 3 years of isolation had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. "Perhaps I am curious about the human who would risk his life answering a distress call in quarantine space," she said finally. "Or perhaps I simply wish to hear another voice before you die of your injuries." She gestured to the deeper recesses of the cave with one of her upper arms. "This shelter has sustained me for 37 months. It has geothermal vents for heat, a small underground stream for water, and enough preserved rations to last another year." Barely, the human she should ask his name, she realized, looked around with obvious appreciation. Her engineering skills had carved this place from solid ice and rock, installing crude but effective life support systems salvaged from her own crashed vessel. "Impressive work," he said genuinely. "You built all this yourself?" "Thauri are self-sufficient by necessity. Our home world was not kind to the weak." She paused, old memories surfacing unbidden. "Though much good it did me in the end." "What happened? Why were you exiled here?" The question struck too close to wounds that had never properly healed. Zarathic's bioluminescent tattoos flared brighter, a threat display. That made the human step back involuntarily. "That is not your concern, small human." Her voice carried the edge of barely controlled violence. "You asked for shelter from the storm. I have granted it temporarily. Do not presume to dig into matters that could still get you killed." But even as she issued the warning, part of her yearned to share the burden she had carried alone for so long. The betrayal, the shame, the crushing weight of being cast out by her own people. For a moment of conscience that had saved human lives outside. The wind began to howl with renewed fury as the storm system she had been tracking finally arrived. The temperature would drop another 20 degrees before dawn, making survival outside impossible even for a Thauri. Forced into a scythe storm hit with the fury of an angry god. Even deep within the cave, Dex could feel the mountain trembling as hurricane force winds hammered the exterior. The temperature began dropping rapidly despite the geothermal vents, and he watched his breath form clouds in the increasingly frigid air. Zarathic moved through her shelter with practiced efficiency, sealing additional ventilation holes with salvaged metal plates, and activating what looked like a primitive heating system cobbled together from ship components. Her forearms worked independently, accomplishing tasks that would have taken him 10 times as long. "The storm will last 3 days, she announced, her bioluminescent tattoos pulsing with what he was beginning to recognize as concentration. "Perhaps 4. The heating system can maintain survivable temperatures for approximately 18 hours. Under these conditions, Dex felt his stomach drop. And after that, we conserve body heat or we die. She turned to face him, her predatory features impossible to read. Your species' core temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. Mine is 42. At current rate of heat loss, hypothermia will claim you first. The matter-of-fact way she discussed their deaths was both terrifying and oddly comforting. At least one of them was thinking clearly. As the hours passed, the cold became an active enemy. Dex tried to stay active, pacing the small cave and doing calisthenics to keep his blood flowing. Zarathic watched him with what might have been amusement, her own metabolism apparently better adapted to the extreme conditions. But even she wasn't immune. By the 14th hour, he noticed her movements becoming less fluid, her breathing slightly labored, the tattoos that covered her elongated. Skull had dimmed considerably. The heating system is failing, she announced unnecessarily. The crude machinery had been cycling more and more frequently, fighting a losing battle against the incredible cold seeping through the rock itself. When the heating system finally died with a mechanical wheeze, the temperature began dropping. Fast, within an hour. Dex couldn't stop shivering despite wrapping himself in every spare piece of fabric in the cave. His injured ribs screamed with each involuntary spasm. Zarathic was faring better, but not by much. Her breathing had become shallow, and frost was beginning to form on her armored carapace. We're going to die, aren't we? Dex asked through chattering teeth. Probably. Her honesty was brutal, but somehow reassuring. Unless, she trailed off, studying him with an expression he couldn't interpret. Whatever she was considering clearly troubled her. Unless what? Shared body heat. It is a survival technique known to both our species. Her voice carried a note of reluctance. But it requires proximity and trust. The implications hit him. Immediately, the sleeping alcove she had carved from the rock wall contained only one betta platform covered with salvaged thermal blankets and what looked like fur pelts. For the beings to share body heat effectively, they would need to be in direct contact. You're talking about sleeping together, he said. I'm talking about not dying. She corrected sharply. Your mammalian physiology generates considerable heat. My own body temperature runs higher than yours. Combined and insulated properly, we might survive until the storm passes. The wind howled louder, as if mocking their desperate situation. Dex could no longer feel his fingers or toes, and each breath sent ice picks through his lungs. Desperate times call for desperate measures, he said finally. Zarathic's expression was unreadable. You would trust a Thalri warrior with your life. I could kill you in your sleep without effort. You could have killed me already if that's what you wanted. He met her gaze steadily. Besides, what choice do we have? She was silent for a long moment, internal conflict playing across her alien features. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Desperate times, human. Get in this bed, or die alone. As they ranged themselves under the thermal blankets carefully, awkwardly, to former enemies forced together by necessity, Dex wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. Zarathic's four-armed form was impossibly alien, her chitinous skin warm but utterly foreign against his own. But as her body heat began to seep into his frozen muscles, and the immediate threat of death receded, he found himself strangely grateful for the bizarre turn his life had taken. What's your name, human? She asked quietly in the darkness. Dex Hawthorne. Well, Dex Hawthorne, she murmured. Try not to die before morning. I would hate to waste the effort of keeping you alive. Melting barrier's first night was pure survival to bodies clinging to warmth. While the storm raged with primal fury outside, Dex had expected awkwardness, perhaps revulsion at such intimate contact with humanity's former enemy. Instead, he found something unexpectedly peaceful in the steady rhythm of Zarathic's breathing, the gentle pulse of her bioluminescent tattoos in the darkness. When dawn brought no relief from the cold, they settled into a strange routine. During the warmer midday hours, they would separate to tend to necessities, checking the cave's systems, rationing their dwindling food supplies, monitoring the storm's progress. But as the temperature dropped each evening, necessity drove them back to the shared warmth of the sleeping alcove. On the second night, Zarathic began to talk. I was not always an exile, she said quietly, her voice carrying easily in the small space. "Before this frozen hell, I commanded 3,000 warriors across 17 systems. The humans knew my battle claw by reputation. We never left survivors." Dex tensed despite himself, but her tone held no threat, only a deep, bone-weary sadness. "What changed?" he asked. "Kepler 4 to be a minor agricultural world your people were trying to establish. Intelligence indicated it was lightly defended, an easy target for resources." Her upper arms gestured in what he was learning was a Thauri expression of regret. The intelligence was wrong. She fell silent, and Dex found himself genuinely curious about her story. "What did you find there?" "Children. Human children in an underground shelter. The adults had died fighting, but they left behind nearly 200 younglings." Her tattoos pulsed with painful memory. "My warriors wanted to kill them loose. Ends potential future threats. Standard protocol. But you didn't." "I tried to," raised my weapon, looked into those small faces. She shuddered, a motion he felt through their shared blankets. "I could not do it. Instead, I ordered my forces to leave the children's supplies and broadcasting equipment. Told them to call for rescue." Dex was stunned. During the war, tales of Thauri mercy were non-existent. They were portrayed as monsters who showed no quarter. "Your own people exiled you for showing mercy?" "For showing weakness," she corrected bitterly. "The High Command declared me mentally compromised, unsuitable for command. They stripped my rank, seized my holdings, and deposited me here to contemplate the price of dishonor. Those children, did they survive?" I monitored human communications for months afterward. "They were rescued within a week, for the first time since he'd met her." Zarathik's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "Some are probably adults now. Perhaps they have younglings of their own." They lay in comfortable silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts. Dex found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about the Thauri. Military propaganda had painted them as soulless killing machines, but the being beside him had sacrificed everything for a moment of conscience. "What about you?" Zarathik asked eventually. "What drives a human pilot to answer distress calls in forbidden space?" Dex's throat tightened. He hadn't spoken about Titan Station to anyone, hadn't wanted to relive the nightmare that had ended his military career. "My squad was investigating Thauri weapon caches after the armistice." He began slowly. "Routine cleanup mission, or so we thought. Turned out one of the sites was booby-trapped." Her understanding was immediate. "A final gift from my people. The explosion killed 4 of my team instantly. I managed to get the other 3 to the medical bay, but," he closed his eyes against the memory. "Brain trauma. They survived, but they're not who they used to be. Cognitive damage. And you blame yourself. I was team leader. My responsibility." The words tasted like ash. "Command offered me a desk job, full pension, all the usual consolations. I couldn't stomach it. Requested transfer to search and rescue instead. To save others because you could not save them." Her insight cut deeper than any blade. "Something like that." Zarathik's lower right arm moved slightly, her clawed hand coming to rest lightly on his shoulder. The gesture was clearly uncomfortable for her. Thauri didn't offer casual physical comfort, but somehow that made it more meaningful. "Survivor's guilt is not unique to humans," she said quietly. "I carry the names of every warrior who died under my command. 18,000 souls who trusted my judgment. Yet you still chose mercy when it mattered, as you still choose rescue when it matters." Her grip tightened slightly. "Perhaps we are both broken, Dex Hawthorne, but we broke in ways that made us more than we were before." Outside, the storm continued its relentless assault, but somehow the cave felt warmer than the failing heating system could account for. The choice on the 4th morning, silence woke them. The storm had finally exhausted itself, leaving behind a crystalline world of impossible beauty. Sunlight streamed through ice formations, casting rainbow patterns across the cave walls. But with the quiet came a new sound, the distant hum of atmospheric engines. "Rescue," Dex breathed, scrambling from the sleeping alcove to his emergency beacon. The device showed multiple contacts approaching fast. Human signatures. Zarathik rose more slowly, her expression unreadable. "It seems your people have found you." The reality of the situation hit him like a physical blow. In a few hours, he would be extracted from this place, debriefed, and eventually returned to his normal life. Zarathic would remain behind alone again on this frozen world, probably for the rest of her natural life. "Come with me," he said impulsively. She stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "I am a Thauri war criminal on a human rescue ship." The outcome would be predictable, not necessarily. The war is over, your actions here. What you told me about the children would be seen as Thauri manipulation by your interrogators. She interrupted. "I would be imprisoned or executed. You would be court-martialed for harboring an enemy combatant." The approaching engines grew louder. Multiple craft, by the sound of it probably a full rescue operation given the dangerous location. "I won't leave you here to die alone," Dex said firmly. "You will because you must." Zarathic moved to her. Weapon cache, selecting items with practiced efficiency. "Your people need you. The rescue missions you run save lives. I am one being against the hundreds you might help." That's not how friendship works. The word hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to build. Zarathic's tattoos pulsed with what he now recognized as deep emotion. "Friendship," she repeated quietly, an interesting concept between former enemies. The first shuttle appeared over the ridge, a sleek human craft bristling with sensors and weapons. More would follow within minutes. "There's another way," Dex said suddenly. "What if you were dead?" "Explain." "The cave system extends deeper into the mountain. Your ship's wreckage is scattered across the glacier. We stage your death, structural collapse, equipment failure, whatever. I report finding no survivors." Zarathic considered this, her tactical mind working through the possibilities. "And then you wait. Give it a few months for the area to be declassified. I come back in a civilian transport, pick you up, and we disappear into the outer colonies, new identities, fresh start. You would give up your career, your life, for someone you've known for days. Those for days taught me more about honor and sacrifice than the previous 10 years, Dex replied. "Besides, what's waiting for me back there? Empty apartments, meaningless missions, the same nightmares about friends I couldn't save." The shuttle was circling now, probably scanning for life signs. Decision time. "The deeper caves connect to a thermal vent system," Zarathic said quickly. "I can survive there indefinitely. But Dex, are you certain? This choice cannot be undone." He thought about his old life, his guilt-driven existence bouncing between rescue missions that never quite filled the hole in his soul. Then he thought about the past for days, real conversations, genuine connection, the strange peace he'd found in the most unlikely place. "I've never been more certain of anything." Zarathic moved with sudden purpose, gathering essential supplies and sealing them in a waterproof container. 6 months, she said. "The spring thaw will make landing easier. There's a plateau 3 kilometers north where a small craft could touch down undetected." 6 months, he agreed. "I'll be there." She paused at the cave entrance, looking back at him with an expression he'd never seen on Thauri features before, hope mixed with something deeper. "Dex Hawthorne," she said formally, "in my culture, when one warrior saves another's life, a debt is created that can only be repaid in kind. I'm not looking for repayment. Nevertheless," she pressed something into his hand, a small carved stone bearing Thauri symbols. "This is my personal seal. When you return for me, I will know you chose this path freely." The shuttle was landing now, kicking up clouds of snow and ice. Shouts echoed across the glacier as the rescue team deployed. "Go," Zarathic said. "And, Dex, thank you for seeing me as more than a monster," as she vanished into the deeper caves. Dex prepared to tell the greatest lie of his career, but for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. 6 months. He could wait 6 months for a chance at something real. In the distance, human voices called his name, promising rescue and return to the old life. But Dex Hawthorne was already planning for something far better, a future where former enemies could become family, and hope could bloom even in the coldest places in the galaxy. The rescue team found him alone, half frozen but alive, with a remarkable story of survival. Against impossible odds, they never found any trace of the Thauri exile who had kept him alive, which was exactly as he'd intended.